And speaking about guys on the wing, and that's not a Tyson's chicken joke. That's a Cade Tyson from Belmont transferring to North Carolina, who is as probably pure of a shooter as they've had since Cam Johnson, that you mentioned, Sherrill. I want to ask you, how do you feel like Cam Johnson? Look at me. How do you feel like Cade Tyson is going to fit in with this roster? Because I think hearing some of the comments that Hubert's made, and then some things that we kind of knew about where they might plug him in, you might see him in a bunch of different spots this year. But one thing I do think this team's going to rely on him for is his perimeter shooting. So, Cheryl, I want you to tell everybody why you think or how you think he's going to contribute within the flow of a very fast-paced offense this year.
Well, obviously, like you said, the first thing is shooting. I mean, that's not a knock. I know people get mad when they're labeled as shooters or non-shooters, but I mean, he's really good at it, and it's an honor, I think, to be called a really good shooter. When you shoot 48% from three for an entire season, you're a great shooter. What surprised me, and I think what will help UNC, he's a lot bigger than I really realized. Like you hear 6'7", and you kind of have an idea of what 6'7", 6'8" looks like, but then you see him, and he's not built like a regular 6'7" guy, 6'8" guy coming out of high school. So you can tell that he's had some time in a college, strength and conditioning program. You can tell that he's played a lot of basketball, and I think that's again hugely important because no matter how talented Ian Jackson and Drake Powell are, they're still going to be freshmen. And so I think there's a bigger difference between high school and college than there is kind of uh, conferences within college. So Tyson will be more apt, have more experience coming in than those two will, and that's going to really help them. I think allow them to be free to do what they do best because he's going to provide shooting, kind of be out there at all times, and UNC will have a chance, depending upon Joey, like you said, where they put him, where they'll have multiple shooters at multiple positions on the court at all times, which again will free things up for the folks whose um, shooting might not be their forte, but driving, dishing, finishing is. So I think that's what he does. You hear announcers; they always talk about gravity now. Like gravity is in the announcing world, but the
It's like
gravity,
like variants on this show.
yeah, variance on this. We've gone 43 minutes without saying variance, but
I wasn't going to let that
um,
slide.
the gravity that he'll have, it'll pull in defenders, and that either leaves R.J. Davis open, it leaves the dunk spot open, it leaves Cadeau available to drive. It just puts the defense at a disadvantage at all times. So that's what I think. He'll fit in what he'll do for UNC. It's just that he'll be able to play multiple positions, and he seems to be a knockdown shooter. He's got to prove it at the ACC level, but he's proven it for 2 years in college basketball already.
With a guy that's able to score from the perimeter and is able to, just with his pure shooting prowess, like a Cade Tyson, how do you think that a sped up offense is going to help him? Is this going to be one of the situations where folks should just look for him on every possession to run straight to the corner? Is he going to be a guy that maybe North Carolina could set up in some almost in kind of like a fake secondary break? How do you anticipate him, being able to acclimate to speed? And then I'm going to push you here. Give me a number that you think he needs to hit per game on average to do what North Carolina wants to do this year as a team.
I think in terms of offense, going in transition, yeah, I think they're going to want to get him out on that left or right wing where he's most comfortable. Perhaps he's, depending on how the play is going, he can slide down into that corner three spot. Once again, I think going back to the report I did, you want to avoid him having to come and turn over his left shoulder. More, you want him more coming on that right side if he's coming up from the corner. But then also in the secondary, could there be a trailer or one thing that Belmont used a lot to get him open? Flare screens going to that left wing side where he, once again, for him, it's all about the footwork. And if you just watch the footwork, you can probably say yes or no. Is it going to go in before the shot happens? So those are the things just in terms of, I think he'll fit in well. But at the same time, he is going to be tasked with rebounding. And, with that size and length, and well as the defensive matchups, will be interesting to see how that plays into him getting out on that wing at the same side of Cadeau or maybe even a little little behind. In terms of a number, I mean, he's been, in the 45, 46% 3-point range. He's been in the 14 to 15%, or sorry, 14 to 15 points per game at Belmont. But if you're going to, in my mind, get 10 to 12 out of him, I think that's a success, because once again, there's good 10 to 10 to 12, but at the same time, if he is able to be on the court at the end of the game, because I think once again, matchups, especially defensively, as well as the adjustment to the speed of the game, will have an impact. But I think that's all going to be a factor in terms of what, once again, each game is going to be a game on itself. But 10 to 12 points, if he's getting hot and he's making several threes per game, that's definitely a win. But once again, if you don't see him on there at the end of the game because of certain maybe limitations defensively or how they want to run things, then there's probably not concerns, but maybe not what you're expecting.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest question mark in my opinion. Is like, can he guard fours? Because I think his length. Actually, I think his length will allow him to guard some threes. But then with the fours, if it's a 6'9" kind of bruising guy, can he handle that? But if the three is a Ian Jackson type, a 6'5", super athletic type guy, will those get in the way? And will that force UNC to not play him? I think that's the biggest question. And as you said, the rebounding too, because it's going to be different. UNC is going to have to team rebound, and whoever plays the three or the four, they're going to rely on a bunch. There's not going to be anybody with 10 rebounds a game, but there'll probably be 7 or 8 that average, 3 or 4 a game, something like that. It's going to have to be a collective, and he's going to be a big part of it.
I think that Tyson could be one of the players that has the greatest variance ding on the roster, just from a standpoint of how teams choose to play him. But I may be projecting too far out as we sit here in October.